Uh-oh. You'll never take me alive! Ooh, herbivores. I'm so scared.
Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope Podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look at Snow White, the live action adaptation of the animated classic from the 1930s. And boy, do we have a lot of things to talk about with this movie. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We are slowly growing our audience, and if we can get a little bit of help here, it'll definitely help us out, because we are always looking to span out, reach new people, and hopefully get you involved with the way that we review movies and what movies we review on this channel. So Albert Einstein famously defined insanity as Well, let me get this out here, because it's quite relevant. So Albert Einstein defines insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now, over the past few years, Disney has decided, in its infinite wisdom, to take movies that are box office hits, classics, and adapt them to live action. And, well, most of them have met with revulsion and ridicule. And you would think after the first attempt, they would just stop and think to themselves, well, maybe people don't want us touching these classics. Maybe we should leave them alone. But no, with every live action adaptation, they just seem to keep thinking, maybe people will like this one. So if that's their thinking, then logically they're fitting Albert Einstein's definition of insanity. And Snow White is no different. I mean, we've seen it with Dumbo, Mulan, Beauty and the Beast, the Sleeping Beauty adaptations with Maleficent. So it is quite a conundrum, isn't it, Lee? This this adaptation here.
Yeah, I just it's hard to understand. It honestly, like, it came out of the gate with nothing but problems, right? And I remember, and I mean, there's been drama around this stuff in the past. I specifically remember, with Little Mermaid, and I don't want to dwell too much on it, but Little Mermaid having was it Halle Berry, right? Halle Berry, whatever her name is. Having her as Little Mermaid obviously was met with a ton of backlash. This, I think, with Rachel Zeigler, got a ton of backlash because people think of, or people know from the original one, hey, why was Snow White Snow White? It's because her skin was white as snow, right? And obviously Rachel Zeigler having a Latina background is made a lot of people unhappy, right? So there's that. Then you have kind of her own comments regarding just kind of the story and how, she kind of almost like looked down upon the original.
She was on the warpath, basically.
She made an odd decision to be the star of a film and make the source material for it in this kind of unfavorable light. So it was a very odd choice to do that. Then you had all the stuff with like the dwarves. I remember Peter Dinklage was talking about it. And you had like all this like type of stuff that happened. I remember there was a picture of like what people thought like the new dwarf characters would be, and it was kind of just like this conglomeration of a bunch of people with different skin colors and everything like that, and people were just like mocking them like ridiculously over it. And there was just so much vitriol for this before it came out. And I still want to say, like, on IMDb, if it's like the worst review thing ever, if I recall correctly. So unfortunately, this came out of the gate having nothing but issues. But
that's putting it mildly, because I mean, yes. And it didn't help that Rachel Zeigler just wouldn't shut her mouth, because if she wasn't trashing the original, then she was making her political views very much known.
Yes.
And mind you, these are political views that offended a certain co-star of hers as well.
Yes, absolutely, right. And that's obviously her and Gal Gadot could not have been further apart on that. So Like I said, nothing but drama, nothing but controversy. But
now, I heard somewhere, and wasn't entirely sure if it's true, but I mean, didn't they say somewhere that her comments or her kind of reaction to the whole Snow White thing wasn't what? I mean, didn't they kind of like ostracize her from the rest of Hollywood?
I don't know how much that impacted things. I will say that after like some of those initial comments came out, I noticed I wasn't hearing a lot of press with her involved with it. So I'm starting to think that they probably were like, "Hey, look, this is not the move to start talking about this."
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, like from Hollywood standpoint, how people
Because
reacted or anything to that.
Because I haven't seen any news saying oh, Rachel Zeigler's been cast in the new Scream movie or anything like that. I'm assuming what she's said and done has pretty much made her a bad apple, no pun intended, in the Hollywood system, because because if you're taking something that has been very much prized and very much beloved by audiences not only in this country but throughout the world, and also just saying and doing a bunch of unsavory things and alienating the people both on camera and behind the camera, it doesn't put you in the social graces of those who could advance your career. And I kind of get the feeling that when she was saying all these things, I would just facepalm and just said, "Lady, you just committed career suicide."
I know, right? You have to kind of just be able to read the room. And I'm not saying like I watched the original Snow White, right? Like there's obviously things that I'm sure like back then, because like I think it came out at like 1937 or 1938 was the
It was
original
before
one.
World War II. I know that.
Yeah. So I mean, like obviously for something like that, I mean 90 years old at this stage, right? So and I mean like some of it, and like I said, I watched it. I'm like, wow, like some of this really sticks out. Like it still has like such good animation, everything like that, and I was really impressed with it. Obviously, one of the elements that probably just isn't as good as like the story beats just aren't really there for the film. I think it's more of kind of a visual spectacle than anything else.
But I mean, in all fairness, I mean, you got to keep in mind that animation at that time, was a lot more.
Oh, of course,
was a lot more strenuous than what it is now.
Of course, yeah, absolutely, right. Like at the end of the day, like it absolutely sticks out as far as what it did in that time frame. And I mean, surely it's still absolutely enjoyable today. Like I watched, I was like, oh, I really enjoyed this. I like the characters, like the dwarfs. Like it was a ton of fun, right? But there's obviously things that I would have liked to see more of, and I think they wanted to do that with this. The problem is I feel like they bit off too much, and it ended up just not working. So I guess I'll go ahead and I'll kind of start, because really in the original one, right, you kind of just start off with, Snow White, she's all grown up, and you kind of get, very minimal information regarding everything that's going on. But in this, they really want to explain the backstory of everything happening. So we have in this version, they have Snow White, and they go out of their way to mention why she's called Snow White, because she was born during this, very heavy snowstorm. So, I guess they're trying to dodge whatever controversy they had by giving her kind of this different origin story, or a different origin, at least for the name.
They want to make it less racistly. You can say it.
Well, no, it's not even that, right? They just don't want to deal with the backlash I feel like happened before. So they're trying their best to just go in a totally different direction and not discuss it like that. So so they have this she has these two loving parents, and they're in this amazing kingdom where everyone is just like awesome, and everyone is just really supportive of each other. It's a total fantasy, right? Because reality is that never works, no matter how many times people try to do it. So you have the mom character, right? In most Disney things, she gets murdered. Or I'm sorry, she doesn't get murdered. She dies.
She dies. Yeah.
She has some type of illness, right? So I apologize. She's okay. So she's out of the picture, and then you have the evil queen comes in, And I mean, it's Gal Gadot, like, that guy's obviously, kind of out right now with his wife being dead. So he's like, oh, Gal Gadot, that, I mean, I could do a lot worse, right? So they get in a relationship, and I guess the king ends up going off to fight some war, and he's never seen from again. Never, right? Now, I'm going to hold off on talking more about him, but I like how they just like spent all this time trying to like, I guess, set up the story, and I don't feel like it's needed, right? Like, I feel like origin stories are not like required to have you enjoy the story, especially if you can't do it well. And I feel like this was just totally unneeded, and I feel like it ended up making the story worse because it just felt like there was more and more holes as we went through.
Yeah, it was a huge distraction, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's boggling. So, did Snow White did you need to know the origin of Snow White to enjoy it?
I mean, if you're going to add to the story, at least make it, pretty relevant. Like the fact that they just say, "Oh, well, she had two loving parents and she was born in a snowstorm." It really doesn't. it really doesn't do anything. It's like, well, yeah. I mean, you could have called her Snow White because her mom wore a white dress or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, there is just a lot of different things that could have done it, and it wasn't like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, it's like, okay, cool. She's named after snow. I'd be kind of feeling a little bit embarrassed for her if it's like, oh, what's the meaning of my name? And someone's like, well, your great grandfather was, saved tons of people, and then you go to somebody else who's like, well, my parents had no ideas, and there's just a lot of snow outside. So we have that. So we get our origin story, right? We go through this passage of time, and I'm guessing it's probably like a decade or more. And we see adult Snow White, right? She's all grown up. She ends up running into her future love interest, this guy named Jonathan, who's stealing stuff for a bunch of bandits. And Snow White, and this is what really started to frustrate me right off the bat. She's like sitting there talking. She's like, oh, I'll just tell the queen that you guys are hungry. Like, maybe she just doesn't know that you guys are out here starving and you're having to steal to get by.
Well, hey, I mean, Rachel Zeigler was perfectly cast because both of them don't know how to read the room,
It was mind-boggling to me because I'm like, she's sitting there, she has this conversation with the queen, and I'm like, have you never had a conversation with her over the past decade? Like, that she's not a caring person, and she doesn't care.
I mean, if your stepmother makes you a slave in your own household, that should kind of give you an indication on where she's at mentally, Yeah,
it made no sense. It was just like, why are you trying to convince yourself that you talking to her is going to change anything? She obviously doesn't care because she would have done something about it a long time ago. So, this is like the big problem when you're trying to help create more of a story. You have to do an effective way. In the original one, you got away with it because, it was the original, right? Like, there was different things that you were focused on that you wanted to talk about. In this one, you try to create this origin story, but then you make your main character look like an idiot. Like, she cannot be this clueless to everything that's going on.
Well, I think what they're trying to go for was that she's very sweet, innocent, and naive. But I mean,
of course.
But I mean, come on, yeah, they can be naive, but the thing is that they learn over time. They kind of pick up on things.
Yeah,
to just have her be completely naive from beginning to end. It's like, well, I mean, that just does a disservice to the character development because that just means she's absolutely learned nothing by the end of the story.
Yeah, your naivety cannot be that far gone, right? Like, it's fine to be naive about stuff, but then, like, when you're doing it to this level where, like, people are literally suffering around you and you think that the queen that you've been around for well over a decade is going to change anything, you're just totally not, like, you can't be saved as a character.
Did you, because when she was talking about how way back in the day when her parents were alive, everybody in the village used to go and pick apples, and she was talking about, well, maybe people can eat apple pies. I was just thinking, so does she assume that everybody can just eat an apple pie and that's it? Like, is that all you need to live? Like, there's a bit of a Marie Antoinette kind of vibe going on where it's like, well,
I know,
just,
I got that
just,
same
just,
thing.
Just let him eat. I mean, you're just let him eat pie. Everybody will be happy. And I kind of have to say, the Queen's making more sense where she's like, it's a luxury. And I'm like, you know what? She may be a bitch, but I'm gonna have to side with her on this one here.
Yeah, there were some very odd decisions made with a lot of the character ideals. So, but with that being said, right, I do want to talk about Snow White, right, because I feel like it's important. What did you feel about Rachel Zeigler's performance for Snow White?
I mean, I've already said it, but I mean, just to reiterate, she's completely clueless and completely naive, and you almost kind of get the feeling that she's very childlike.
Yes, that's a good thing.
From beginning to end, and it's like, well, another thing that strikes me too is the fact that not only does she, I'm thinking she probably assumes that everybody can just eat an apple pie every day and they'll be happy, but she also seems to think that that everybody has a bit of goodness in them. And my thing is that if you can't really understand the fact that everybody in the kingdom is being turned into soldiers, and that your own stepmother is basically treating you as a slave in your own home, then you really, really don't understand people that well. And not only that, it kind of just shows just how poor of an observer you are. Like, even if you are, I mean, because you hear stories all the time about how servants, who've been working in a household for years and years, they have a perfect understanding of human psychology because they see what's going on behind the scenes, and so they know just exactly what will make this person tick or how to get on this person's sweet side, right?
Yep.
Rachel Zeigler's Snow White just seems to have one approach, and it's like, well, no, you're not going to be able to approach everybody the same way. I mean, the way that she approaches the bandits is the same way she approaches her stepmother, really.
Yeah, it's to me, it was just shocking to see the character interact with people the way she does, because there's a certain stage where it's like, okay, like, it's fine to have this like super, like, you want this character to be super pure and like above everything, right? Like, I get that's what the angle is, but it can't come at the expense of, like, you're making this a live action adaptation, right? So like, you're creating this real life world of everything that's happening. The reality is that everybody that actually exists is not like this. So it just takes you out of the story, and where like animation could probably pull it off because you're not really associating that person with the real life person, right? It's just somebody that you can just fictionalize, you create whatever you want, right? You're going to make it live action, you better make the character feel real. And she was anything but that. Though I will say, I will give Rachel Zeigler some props. She could sing, right? I will say I like the singing performance.
That's the only thing she can do, Lee.
I had to give some positive, right? So I'll give that to her when everything else is pretty much garbage outside of that.
Well, I mean, the Gal Gadot, that's pretty much all she's got, really.
Yeah, right. And I think that's a good thing for us to talk about as well, right? So, because like, really, it kind of starts off where, so she's, interacting with this guy, Jonathan, who's trying to, steal some stuff, steal food. He ends up getting caught. They bring Jonathan up to the queen, and she's pretty much like, hey, we're going to tie him up in the square, and he's just gonna freeze to death, right? What a normal person does. So Snow White ends up going out there. She unties the rope and everything, and allows Jonathan to escape. And this is where, the evil queen, she, converses with the magic mirror. And this is where we get our experience with the magic mirror, right? Which is obviously, one of the big, I'm going to say, characters from the original one, right? And I like how, I guess, up until this point, Gal Gadot has been the fairest one of them all, but because, like, Snow White gets the hots for a guy, all of a sudden now she's the fairest. I didn't get that at all. Don't know what we're supposed to be inferring from that idea. But Gal Gadot being the Evil Queen. What did you think about her performance, Luka?
I mean, keep in mind, this is a woman who competed as Miss Israel several years back. Not to mention, she played, Wonder Woman. Who's and you need to be, you need to look a certain way in order to get that role, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't a knock against Rachel Zeigler, but if you compare the two, if you were to ask me who's the first of them all, I'm going to say it's Gal Gadot, like
for sure,
hands down. Now, in terms of the acting, and you've alluded to this as well, it's one of those things where I think it was a horribly miscast role.
Absolutely.
Because if they were just going for looks, fine, that makes sense. But but whenever you're in a Disney movie, and someone should have told Gal Gadot this, you're going to be doing a lot of things. You're not just going to be staying there looking pretty, right? This isn't the stage of this universe. You're going to have to actually do some work, right? You can't just get by with looking pretty and swinging the sword around and that's it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess someone declined to tell her that, hey, if you read the contract very carefully, you're going to have to do some singing.
Oh yes, the singing, and let me talk about like the Evil Queen, right? Like she has to be intimidating, right? Like she has to be this super scary character, and I feel like in the original one, right? Like they do a great job. Like that was one Evil Queen, right? I would 100% believe that person's evil, right? For Gal Gadot, anytime that she was trying to be sinister or she was trying to act mean, it didn't land at all. It was so hard to watch her trying to come off as intimidating, right? It's just not her character, right? And that's fine, right? Like a lot of people get typecast as a certain thing because that's where they excel at it. Her trying to be like intimidating or scary, not happening at all. So
I mean, it's kind of like,
that.
well, it's kind of like how Mark Hamill went from being Luke Skywalker to voicing the Joker, right? A lot of people were a bit apprehensive about that, but the way that he was able to, articulate, the character's menacing quality, it kind of won people over. People bought into that, right? Whereas here, it's like Gal Gadot really hasn't done anything to kind of let us know she's menacing, apart from just maybe raising an eyebrow and maybe raising one or two fingers every now and then, right?
Yep. Well, she is dressed in all black, right? So that's like scary, I think, right?
I mean, I will say this: Angelina Jolie, I thought she did a far better job as as Maleficent, as this menacing character, because you can actually see her, as a menacing person, in that role, as opposed to Gal Gadot, where it's like, the last time she was in, as Wonder Woman was probably like a few years ago when she did The Flash, right? So that role is still burned in our memory. And by the way, check out our review of The Flash. That was one of the very first reviews we ever did on the channel. But it's just one of those things where it's like, if you're going to cast Gal Gadot, in the role, maybe do a little bit more work or a little bit more coaching to kind of make her appear that way, right? Because otherwise, you're just going to have to get someone else who can actually, not only appear menacing, but also have the acting and musical chops to carry the role, because it's a very demanding role. Anytime you are put in a Disney movie, you are carrying a lot of expectations, not only from the filmmakers, but also from the audience, right?
Yeah. Like a lot of, I think back to a lot of like those Disney movies. Like I think of those villains so much, right? You think about Scar and like just the awesome lines that he had, the singing that happened. Like there's just a ton of those types of like characters where the villain is just as much as integral to the story as everything else, and they might not be on the screen as much, but they have this like lasting impact. And unfortunately, Gal Gadot does not provide that in the role for the Evil Queen. So it felt extremely flat to me regarding that. So we kind of, now that the magic mirror, right, has told her that she's no longer Ferris, she, follows kind of the same, I think, kind of story beats that we see in the original one. She sends the huntsman out with Snow White. Snow White goes to pick apples for those apple pies that you were talking about. Which always made it weird to me. It's like, if you're going to present the town as starving, but then you have this like apple orchard, whatever that's out there, and like no one's going out there to get apples. Like, do they not know it exists? Why are they not going out and getting their own apples if they're starving? I don't know, but I thought that was really stupid. It really bugged me. But she goes out there to, pick up some apples. The huntsman has this kind of, change of heart, doesn't want to kill her, ends up allowing her to escape into the woods, which I would argue, I don't know how much safer that would be. It's like, yeah, I guess I don't want to die, but I don't know if like running without food and water into a random forest is going to be a lot better. But I guess that's better than going to get murdered.
Yeah, but she's got apple. Yeah, but she's got apples, and as we know, people live on apples in this universe.
That's true. Yep, like they say, an apple pie a day keeps the doctor away.
Mm-hmm.
So she's stumbles into the forest, and eventually she finds the house of the 7 dwarfs, right? And she falls asleep, just like in the original. And then we get to meet the dwarfs, and this was always going to be a challenge, right? This is always going to be weird, because you're gonna try to blend real characters with CGI, and I was not a fan of the design of the dwarves. What did you think about the dwarves?
I mean, you're being financed by Disney, which is a multi-million-dollar company, and this is the best you could do. Like, it's shit. Whoever was doing the CGI just filmed it in. They're like, well, it's cleared my bank account. I'll see you mofos later.
Yeah, I know, and it's so weird, right? Because it's like, I don't know if it was just like art direction or if they couldn't figure out how to best do it, but it just came out and it just looks so weird. In the original one, right? Like, they're very cartoonish, right? Like, they kind of just are like there, and they all kind of like look a certain way, right? Where these dwarves, they feel like a lot older. They look like a bunch of miniature grandpas. Like, it's just, I don't know. It was such a weird choice to go that route. The other thing that was very weird to me is in the original one, right? All these dwarves have very distinct personalities, right? They all had, like, obviously they have their own thing. One's, bashful and, blushes all the time. One's sneezes all the time. Like, I mean, they're not in-depth characters. I'm not trying to pretend like, they're super well written, but it felt like half of them, like, Doc, Grumpy, Dopey, like, and Sneezy, you saw a lot of them. But then the other ones was just like, oh, Happy? Like, how are you portraying Happy in this? Or Bashful? Like, some of them just, like, you couldn't even tell who they were. It was just like a bunch of random people, and if they didn't have anything super obvious, they didn't stick out. So, like I said, it was just super bizarre to me. The other thing that was really weird to me was, and I have to admit, I felt really bad when this happened. Why were they making fun of poor Dopey? Right? Like, in the original one, they didn't, like, they all seemed to just, like, cohabitate and coexist, right? Like, they were just, like, a bunch of people that got together and they had this, maybe not, like, great, like, friendship, but they at least, like, kind of coexisted with each other and had no problems. In this one, like, they actively, like, mocked Dopey, and I was just like, wow, this is, like, very, like, it just doesn't feel right to have those characters doing that, because we're supposed to like these characters, but then they're picking on poor Dopey.
Well, Lee, you have to remember. I mean, besides being a Disney movie, it's also a PSA for stopping bullying. Like,
that's a good point. I didn't think about that, but you're right. Maybe that's what they're going for.
# bullies can suck. Whatever.
It was weird to me, because it's like, you're supposed to make these characters all likable, right? Like, I don't think back to the dwarves. I think any of them are unlikable. The one that's probably the most unlikable is obviously Grumpy, but the whole thing for him is his character kind of changes over time because he warms up to Snow White. In this one, the same thing doesn't really happen. And like I said, I was very surprised with how they did the characters, or did the dwarves more specifically. But it is what it is. So,
but I mean, another thing you want to keep in mind too is the fact that they're trying to do something different, with the dwarves, but it's not really executed as well as they thought, right?
No.
They probably looked at it on paper and thought, wow, like this is definitely gonna make these dwarves different from the 1937 version. But when they actually do it, it's like, well, really, they're pretty much all the same. The only thing that's different is the way they look. And by the way they look, it's just like if you change like the color of their shirts here and there, maybe give them like a different colored beard, that's different. We'll just go with that. But to your point, I mean, as much as you want to try to make them different, they're all assholes because they're all picking on Dopey, who it turns out isn't dumb. He's just mute. So then my question is, so is he dopey because he can't talk, or what? Why don't you just call him Muty then?
Muty doesn't sound as good, but I 100% understand where you're coming from. And just like I said, and it's weird too because like they played such a critical role in the first one, then this one they feel almost like out of place because I mean they don't really play a huge impact for the overall story, even at the end. So just a lot of interesting things that they're doing.
Yeah, but I mean, like, could you imagine what it would have been like had they just done Snow White without the dwarves, right? There would have been a huge backlash. It's kind of like with Mulan, and when they got rid of Mushu, and everyone was like, well, can you really call it an adaptation of Mulan without Mushu? So
yeah,
maybe that's a lesson that they gleaned. They just thought, you know what, we'll have the dwarves, but we'll just have them in the background, like they're just there, just so people don't get mad at us and say, well, you guys took out the dwarves because you felt like they were an inconvenience, or it's racist to have dwarves in movies now, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think the reason that they played second fiddle, and I think this is obviously the biggest change that they did with this, right? So Snow White, she, with the dwarves for whatever period of time, they have nice songs to clean the house, etc., etc. She decides, like, okay, well, now that that's done, like, I need to go find these rebels because, I want to find out more about my father, who I think is still alive. So I need to go out there and do that. And this is where she meets Jonathan again and his merry band of of very diverse looking bandits that are there. And this is where obviously, I think Jonathan is posed very loosely around the prince from the original. Obviously, the prince of the original didn't really have a lot going on with him. So I understand why they want to do a little bit more with this character, but this is a Snow White film. It's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I know that they just call it Snow White this time, but obviously the OG, we think of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And I just feel like adding the rebels with Jonathan is totally unneeded because it just takes away screen time from the characters. Like, if you fell in love with the original Snow White, you want to see Snow White and the dwarves. You don't want to see Snow White, the dwarves, the Snow White's missing backstory, and then this rebel group of people that are trying to overthrow the evil queen. and like, to me, the rebels were just such an odd ad, and it just made the screen time just for an hour and 40-minute film. There was too many things going on.
Did you kind of get the feeling that the rebels were supposed to be the stand-in for the dwarves? Because in Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, right? Whereas here it's like, Snow White, she's got two crews who are vying for her, the dwarves and the rebels, right? And and apparently the rebels went out because she's spending more time with them. You know what I mean?
Yes, no, and it's interesting, right? Because I remember, right, and I will go back to the beginning. We talked about the backlash. Right? I remember people saw a picture of the rebels thinking that they're the dwarves, and that caused a ton of backlash because they're like, "Oh, you know what, like they have these, 7 like, racially diverse people. That's what they're putting in instead of the dwarves, and everyone freaked out about it.
Yeah.
Now, it's curious, right? Did they just repurpose them because they're like, oh, everyone hated this, we need to add the dwarves, and let's just make this other group of people, we'll make them something else. I don't know for a fact if that's what happened. For all we know, like, people just saw an out of context picture and they put too much into, like, oh, that's the dwarves. But I do
but that would be but that would seem to be the implication, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
it
I mean?
is interesting. They're fighting for screen time, and it just felt so odd to do it like that. But that's what we got. So Snow White ends up meeting with Jonathan, and the queen has like sent out her army of people after him. Jonathan ends up taking a crossbow that was meant for Snow White. So this is where she brings them back to the dwarves. So now we have the rebels and the dwarves together, and they are really relying on Doc to save Jonathan. And I find this really interesting, right? Because there was a lot of, I think I remember, like, especially from like Rachel Zeigler, talk about how, their love story was not very realistic, and it was just kind of like the stalker story, kind of. And I remember those comments, and then I look at this one, and I'm like, oh, do you feel like this love story is significantly better? Because like you guys could just kind of, get this like love at first glance type of thing going on, and he gets shot, and then like all of a sudden you guys have this like, inseparable relationship, even though you've known each other for like less than 24 hours. I get it. It's a Disney movie, but I find it, funny that she's going to poke holes at the original love story, but this one doesn't really do it a whole lot better.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
I mean, it seems pretty contrived too, because it's like, well, and if you think about it, it's kind of like, it's that argument of trying to say, well, what you guys did, makes absolutely no sense, but then what you do, makes even less sense. So it's like, well, where's the consistency in any of this stuff? It's like, what? I mean, now, granted, I mean, I'm assuming what they were trying to do is trying to like stay true to the to the original in terms of its portrayal of romance while adding a modern twist to it.
Yes.
But I mean, what they end up doing is just creating something that's completely incoherent, right?
Yeah.
And my thing is that I don't think the Jonathan character should have had as much screen time as he did, right? He should have been like, the prince who comes at the end of the movie and done his business, and that was it. But I get, but I can sort of understand where they want to try to be a bit more consistent, try to fill in all those holes that that would otherwise make people ask questions, but in the process they end up creating more plot holes that create new questions, and they end up not being able to answer it, and instead just glossing it over or saying, well, it's something you just don't understand. You have to be in the know to understand. And it's just one of those things where it's like, well, what is there to understand? I mean, you're creating something that is entirely inconsistent, that doesn't make any sense, that plays no significant role in the movie. I mean, why would the bandits be there? You have to create a story about how there is a rebellion, only to find out, oh, turns out the whole rebellion is based on the lie. So then what are you really, what's justifying your cause then, if there really is no figurehead to rally around? Oh, I know, we'll just rally our allegiance from a supposedly or an allegedly still living king and transfer it to his daughter, because that makes a lot of sense. And it's like, well, no, that just raises more questions, because then the question that you would ask is, if you're trying to rally around someone who's opposite to the queen, and everybody knows that Snow White is the daughter of the king, wouldn't it make more sense for everybody to just rally around Snow White from the beginning, instead of first saying, well, we're hoping that the real king returns, only to find out, oh, he's been dead the whole time. So hey, Snow White, you want to be your new figurehead? Congratulations.
That to me, right? Because this segues perfectly into what I want to talk about, right? Because this is a head scratcher for me, right? So Jonathan, after he gets saved by the dwarves, right? He ends up like going out there. He gets captured by the Queen's soldiers while he's trying to like escape or do whatever. I don't remember.
How stupid is this guy to keep getting captured over and over again?
I know, right? He's not the greatest future prince, right? So he gets captured, right? He gets brought up to the Queen. So he has like a pendant that Snow White had. So the Queen's like, oh, clearly you met her and you know her. So this is where the Queen gets into her, famous like, old crackly witch disguise, and goes out with the poison apple to give to Snow White. She, finds, the house of the dwarves, gives her the apple. She falls unconscious just like the first one. And then she admits to her that the king has been dead all along. And I was just like, no, that can't be real. She must be lying, because it would be so stupid to have the king continuously get brought up just for him to be dead all along. So the whole time I'm watching this till the end, I'm thinking like, okay, the king's going to show up, right? Like she's lying to him because like we've heard about this king constantly, right? He went out on this, battle campaign. She, the huntsman, mentions that the king might be alive when she meets Jonathan. He's like, oh, the king, he was like, we heard he's been captured and stuff. So like this whole time we're under this premise that he's alive. And then the movie's just like, no, he's actually dead, whatever. And I'm like, no, why would you do that? Like, why create this character? Why have it be this, I mean, not obviously super pivotal to the story, but why have it be constantly brought up if you're not going to actually utilize him for anything? And you brought up a fantastic point, right? Why does it, if the king is not pertinent and he's been dead all this time, why not have everyone just alliance with Snow White? It makes no point to have everyone like going for this king that's been dead all along when you had this perfect person for everyone to get behind. That would make a ton more sense. It would give her a ton more purpose in the film in Snow White to have her be the person that's corralling everybody, but then you kind of like dull it because you have this king here. So I'm sorry.
Plus, if you think about it, it would give the Queen a far more reason to want to get rid of her, right?
Yes.
So if you're going with that storyline of this isn't a fairy tale, it's a political thriller or whatever bull crap you want to use, then
political thriller Snow White.
I mean, then it would make because then the evil queen turning into the old hag and giving the apple. Obviously you eliminate the leader. The rebels scatter, right? Because they've got no figurehead. Mm-hmm. So that would make far more sense. But no, you keep carrying on and keep saying, oh well, the king is in some far off place, but he'll return. And I think at some point, either Jonathan or the Queen alluded to the fact that he was captured. And my thing was, wait, if you've got a sizable, rebel, faction who wants to overthrow the Queen, wouldn't it make any sense for someone to go looking for the missing king and actually verifying and seeing if he actually is captured? I feel like there's a lot of bad intel on their part, really.
Well, remember, right? The Rebel Alliance is like 7 people, so that's all we ever saw.
but the implication is that there seems to be more people. So it's like,
of course. But
so it's like, well, okay, so all right. So as rebels, you fucked up on a few fronts. First, you seem to buy into this lie that the king is alive, when if you had any sense, you probably either would have found someone who was at the battle, or you would have gone and looked for yourself. Mm-hmm. And two, based on the intel that you would have gleaned on whether or not the king was dead, you probably would have made a decision about who needs to be the figurehead. Now, my thing is, I think what they should have done was they should have just automatically sworn their allegiance to Snow White from the very beginning, instead of playing this 100%. Whole game of who do we need to align with in order to overthrow the Queen, because it makes absolutely no sense for them to change course midway and decide, what, Snow White, you're our girl, you're the one we want to lead us. And she's like, oh, thanks. I guess I'm sloppy seconds now. I mean, because obviously I wasn't important to you people until you found out that the king is actually dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like I said, truly a baffling decision to have it be a story element that does nothing. And they don't even show his death. Like, what it would have been a lot more impactful if
it's
you
a flashback.
the queen killing the king, right? Like, that would have been interesting to see. Because then it's like, oh, damn, like, look how bad she is. Or, like I said, you could have had the king, like, he went out to protect Snow White and got killed, right? Like, there's so many things you could have done by just, like, giving us, like, how hard would it be to throw in, like, a minute or two flashback to show that happening?
Well, let me
be like, he died.
Well, let me propose this. So, obviously, we know the evil queen is capable of transforming herself because she turns, into a sexy hag. Why couldn't we have had, scenes of?
I have questions about that, but I will not dive into that at this time. So
don't judge me, all right?
Okay.
I know you're the movie pope. Don't judge me. Love is love. So we know that the queen is capable of transformation. Why couldn't we have seen scenes of the king here and there, like in the woods, right? And then when everybody gets together and they're like, Your Majesty, we've been loyal to you. We protected your daughter. He morphs into the queen, and it turns out she's been playing with everybody's head the entire time. That would have made the story far more interesting, and it would have and it would have made the queen far more menacing, right? Because
Absolutely.
then because then we know she's been manipulating everybody this entire time, because not only does she have the rebels where they want, but she kind of gets them all in one place to where she can do whatever the hell she wants to do with them afterwards, right? So it's like a classic counterintelligence move that you see in spy movies and all that stuff.
That's good. There was definitely opportunity to, I don't think many people are going this with like, oh, I cannot wait to get the story of Snow White, but gosh, you could have done so much more.
But they overcomplicated it. That's the thing.
They did. Yeah.
Like, as soon as you introduce the whole rebel thing and the whole we're waiting for the king to return, to say they shot themselves in the foot is an understatement. I mean, they took a shotgun and kneecapped themselves, and then decided, well, I don't really need feet, so I'll just blow my feet off as well. I'll just walk on stumps for the rest of my life. Like, it's just so moronic. Like, nothing about it makes sense, because by adding these elements, you just raise more questions, and their attempt, if you can even call it an attempt, to explain things away, just fuels the fire. Really,
absolutely, because you have Snow White, as she's like passed out, right? Or she's unconscious, because we can't kill her with the poison apple. Like, she has to, get love's first kiss. Or I don't remember if that's the same thing as this.
Well, here's another thing that I have an issue with. I mean, so if she's evil, you would expect her to be, evil. Like, nothing is sacred. Like, I will do whatever it takes to ensure that my rule is not screwed up, because I kind of enjoy, sitting on the throne and lording it over everybody.
Look, man, Disney. She can't be that evil. She can't be that evil, because reality is, like, she would have, realistically speaking, she just would have killed off Snow White when she was young, right? Like, she would have even made it this far in life.
Okay. Well, I take it back. So the queen, so the queen is as equally inept as Snow White is naive. Okay,
there we go. I like that. Yep. So yeah, but she follows the same path of like, oh, she's the poison apple, needs true love's kiss. Jonathan, breaks out of his prison, finds the unconscious Snow White, and revives her, is the way I phrased it in how I was writing this. But gave her a little smooch, and that brought her back to life. And this is where Snow White is like, hey, I don't like the queen. I think we need to overthrow her. And I'm like,
so that's when she knows that the queen is bad. It's not the fact that she made her a slave. It's the fact that she gave her a really bad apple.
Yes, exactly. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
I had no idea she was that attached to apples. Okay.
Look, like, after she almost got killed by the huntsman, and like I said, the huntsman, was, tasked with cutting out her heart, right? So, we already went really dark with that, but she's like, you know what? This is where I draw the line. There's only so many times that I want to be knocked out with an apple before I need to overthrow her. So she bands together our bandits and our dwarves, and
the townspeople. They go
but
they go lay Miz on the queen here.
It's true. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. I will say this, Luka. Right? And are you sitting down for this comment?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
I want to say something slightly positive about Snow White right here.
Oh, she finally grew a pair. Is that it?
Well, I mean, other than that,
because that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking the entire time. I'm like, okay, she finally grew a pair. All right.
When Dopey talked, I was like, okay, that made me feel a little bit warm. I was like, you know what? I like that, right? Because we've seen him, like, we know, like you said, he's not really dopey, he's muty. So like to hear him talk was like, oh, that's nice, actually. Like I like that. I don't know what maybe really care at that stage because it's about 9 minutes in and we only have 10 minutes left of the film. But having Dopey talk, I was like, you know what? I'll give them a little bit of credit, right? Snow White in the original one, she had practically no urgency in her own film, right? It was really just the 7 dwarves, and then Snow White was kind of there, right? That's the reality of it. Everything kind of revolves around Snow White, but she has very little agency in her own film. This one, they attempt, though they fail miserably at it, they did attempt to be like, you know what? You know, Snow White, she's this, you know, pure altruistic character that really gives people hope of what they used to have. And I think that is, well, not unique. It was at least refreshing to get out of the film. It's not executed well. They didn't do a good job with it. But if I had to say one positive, there was something to go there with seeing her be able to kind of bring people together to go against the queen.
And I think that kind of comes in pretty late when it should have been something that kind of been referenced at the very beginning.
Of course. And this is where, like I said, it would have made a ton more sense if the king was dead and and Snow White was just captive, or they do something different with it, so people all backing her. Because like when Jonathan initially meets Snow White, he doesn't even know that's Snow White. So obviously she has zero presence. So you're absolutely right. I'm not going to pretend like it's well written. I don't think they did a good job of doing it. I will say I appreciated them trying to do at least something with the character, even if they fail miserably at it.
But I mean, like, it's an addition that shouldn't have been, added in the first place. That's my gripe. You know,
fair, totally fair. 100% agree with you. Because so she decides like, hey, I need to go defeat the queen. And like you pointed out, they go full Les Mis on them. And I like how Gal Gadot like presents her with this like crystal dagger, right? And she's just like, she kind of like turns it on herself, and she's like kind of egging Snow White on, like, kill me. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, she can just do it, right? Like, the queen is like Adolf Hitler of this place. Like, are you trying to tell me that if like someone came up to Adolf Hitler and Adolf Hitler was like, hey, here's a gun, let me point at my head, I want you to pull the trigger, right? Everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, just pull the trigger, right? That's perfect, right? No one's gonna blame you for killing Adolf Hitler, right? That guy's a piece of shit. It's the same thing with the queen. The whole time I'm thinking like, okay, you're trying to like show that she's above that, right? I get that, right? That's what you want to go for. But the queen, she's kind of this huge bitch that has been manipulating all these people, has been like ruining their lives for over a decade. I hate to say it, I would have killed her. And I would have not batted an eye to it. What about you, Luka? Would you stab the queen?
I mean, you've got the full support of the townspeople too, and you kind of have to. My only thing is that because she's got her soldiers around her, you kind of have to wonder how just how loyal or how fearful would they have to be to kind of step in and intervene? Because
Yeah.
a part of me is kind of wondering. I mean, listen, if it was one of those situations where she's like, I won't have there'll be no retribution, my guards won't touch you, just go, here's a freebie, do it, then yeah, I would. my thing is that it was all just part of a political pawn or some sort of mind game she's playing.
Of course.
Because I keep thinking she can't really make it that easy. Like, they can't just expect her to just, push the dagger in and that's it and not have consequences, right?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of things, and, obviously, and we do see that it takes her not killing the queen to open up to the soldiers, and this is where everything happened. But yeah, deep down, I was just like, you know what? That would have been a great twist. If they just have Snow White straight up murder the evil queen, that would have been something I was not expecting.
I mean, because they've already added like so many elements in there. I mean, what's one more addition going to do?
Yeah, why not? Right? Just have her kill her. So, she convinces, she overthrows the queen through the power of song and persuasion.
Yep. Again, Les Mis. They went Les Mis.
Absolutely right. So the queen, this whole end part was just like, I have no idea. I felt like I was on drugs. The queen returns to the magic mirror. The magic mirror says that, your beauty is only skin deep. Like, it's what inside that's matter. And Snow White has that much better than you. So it causes...
I busted out laughing when it said that.
I know,
like,
right?
I'm sorry. Have you ever talked to Snow White? Like,
it's like literally like a second grade thing to say, but it is what it is. That's probably what the audience is for this.
Yeah.
And
true.
so the evil queen, she decides to destroy the magic mirror, but in doing so, she opens up the Phantom Zone, basically.
Yeah,
exactly. Damn it! That was my Phantom Zone joke too. You son of a bitch! You took my joke. But yes, that's exactly what I said. I said the same thing. She just gets sucked into the Phantom Zone, and then that was it. And I'm like, what happened? Where does this come from? Why did she get sucked into the Phantom Zone?
Lee, can I ask
you? Why does she have powers to begin with?
Well, Lee, can I ask you this? Have you noticed that there seems to be a lot of like disturbing references to the DC universe? Like, I mean, it's Disney after all, and they own Marvel. Like, I kind of feel like there's a lot of dig at DC because you got Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously it's a chance for them to kind of make Wonder Woman a bitch, and then you've got the Phantom Zone reference. The Huntsman, didn't he play Black Manta in the Aquaman films?
What? I do not know about that. I am not.
I'm gonna look it up now because I could have sworn I've seen him in Aquaman. But I'm sorry. Go on. I know you had.
Yeah. While you're looking that up, right? Because like it was just such a bizarre thing, and yeah, if it was the Phantom Zone, it would be really funny if like we saw Zod and all of them are just in there too, and they're like, "Oh, this is really awkward." But
no, he wasn't. Sorry.
Okay. I didn't think it was him. So. But yeah, it just like I said, just a totally awkward thing to have happen, and it just comes out of total left field. Like, granted, in the original one, right? And I remember I asked you this right beforehand. Do you remember how the Evil Queen died in the first one, in the original one, the one for the 30s?
Yeah, didn't she get chased by the dwarves, and then she got killed or something?
Yeah, right. So it
was a pretty ignominious way to die. I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and I get that. Like, for what really happened was like the dwarves chasing her. She's like on this cliff. There's like some lightning that strikes, and she gets knocked off. Right. It's odd. Right. That's already odd enough as it is. But I feel like they turned it up a notch by having the magic mirror be some type of void that she gets sucked into, and that's that. And I'm like, that made no sense. There is nothing to me that made that make any sensible reason for that to happen. So yeah,
because it's literally a void. Like, I would have thought there would have been like I mean, I thought you would at least see like the figure who is the face in the mirror, like with her, and it's like welcome to the Underland or whatever crap,
The Underland?
Or Mirrorland or whatever.
Yeah, it's just it was odd to say
the land behind the mirror glass, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, just totally just out there, made no sense, and I was just like, okay, I guess that's the end of it. So then now she's now the queen of the castle, so to say, and that was it. I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I feel about that, and I just
you just wasted an hour and 40 minutes of
yeah. I mean, yeah. Let me backtrack. Right, I knew how I felt about it. The ending just made me realize how dumb it was the way it ended. So I guess I will give my final thoughts about this. This was a train wreck from beginning to end. Adding a backstory that added more questions that had answers. Just poorly miscast from everybody in this. I don't want to give Rachel Zeigler too much flack for her performance because there's just not much you could do with this character. So I think she, I don't know, did a good job of being whatever they wanted her to be for it, but it's not saying a whole lot. Gal Gadot was just totally unconvincing as the evil queen. I think she could absolutely pull off the looks of, when we're talking about who the fairest is, sure, Gal Gadot could be on that list.
Like if she had no lines or anything like that, then yes.
Sure, yeah, right. Or like I said, you have to really play to her strengths, or you have to change up how you do things, because when she's trying to intimidate people, it's not intimidating at all, right? She cannot do that. It's just like I mean, you see that a lot of times where like you try to make these characters intimidating or this actress or actor intimidating. It just doesn't work because they're either not capable of doing it, or we've just seen them not be that role for so long that it just, you don't think about them being like that. And Gal Gadot's absolutely like that.
It's not her wheelhouse.
Yeah,
to do that.
yeah, it's not in her repertoire to do it. You bring in the dwarves, which I mean, you have to have them, but then they look hideous, abominations, and you honestly get rid of a lot of what made them interesting. Then you add the rebels, which just adds a whole bunch of extra screen time into characters we don't care about. And then like, hey, I guess the prince had at least a little bit more of a role in what happens, but barely in all realism. So it just kind of falls flat. And then I don't know about the end. Shit just happened, and we're just supposed to be like, okay, sure, yeah, she just got sucked into the mirror world, whatever. And then that's the end. It was honestly such a bizarre thing from beginning to end. Like I said, about the only positives I came up with were, number one, I think Rachel Zeigler is a fine singer. I think, if you're going to have this be songs involved, she obviously did a much better job than Gal Gadot when it came to the singing roles. And I will admit a soft spot for how they, kind of made her be this character that provides people with the hope to like fight back, even though they did a very poor job of executing it overall. And that's that. I would give this a 1.2 poisonous apples out of 5. I feel like they missed the mark immensely.
I'm giving it a 0 out of 5. I mean,
oh shit, man.
I mean, listen. Last time we did a review of of the Minecraft movie, and even then I was being very generous with that. But at least Minecraft had some moments that I could sort of understand and laugh at, genuinely.
Yeah,
I would rather watch Jason Momoa and Jack Black 69 in midair than watch Gal Gadot sing.
I'm gonna copy that and I'm gonna make that my ringtone. So whenever Luka calls, I'm gonna hear about Jack Black. And
in my voice.
Yes. Oh my gosh. But yes, no, I would.
Well, you better. Well, I seldom call you. I only text you, so I have to figure that out. But
we'll figure out a way.
But I mean, the thing for me is that the biggest gripe was that famous song that the dwarves sing. You remember Hi Ho?
Yep.
And as a kid, whenever you hear that song, they sing, that song and then they whistle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the fuck they were doing here. It's like they were taking like these classic songs and rearranging them and just redoing the lyrics. And it's like, that's sacrilege. That's the equivalent of walking into a church and defecating on the altar.
Well,
like,
remember, right?
Why would you do that?
Whistle.
But that's not but that isn't something that was needed at all. Like
you're
adding so many elements in there, and then when you add these elements, you come to realize, oh shit, we can't have this, so we got to change this around, and then it just becomes a huge mess. It's like it's like if you're trying to like add another room to the house, you have to like knock down a few walls. You end up knocking down a retaining wall, and then you end up having to do all these things to try to make your vision work, but also make sure your house isn't falling down. And then you end up with something that is just shit. I mean, that's what it is. It's like they they screwed up so many different elements of this movie to where it just screws up the things that we loved about the original 1937 classic. So to the point where the songs themselves are unrecognizable, really. Another thing too is the fact I feel like they kept trying to do too many things here. I mean, obviously, the dwarves being assholes to Dopey is their anti-bullying campaign because they have to do a PSA in the middle of everything. They're trying to stress the fact that it's the inner beauty that counts, not outer beauty. Well, we're good as inner beauty if the person who's supposed to be beautiful on the inside is also completely stupid and doesn't know how to read a room. Not to mention the fact that it just seems like the rebels have no idea of who they want to rally behind. They're rallying behind someone who may or may not be dead. And I guess for whatever reason, they default to Snow White because they figured, she's there. She's related to the king. We sort of like her. We'll just,
good enough,
support her. Yeah. I also get the feeling they keep, and I don't know if you got the sense too, but it kind of felt like they're trying to like do a bunch of different genres or reference a lot of different things at different times and places, because that part where she runs around the woods and she falls down, it kind of reminded me of Rambo a little bit, her just running around and like trying to survive, and then she does that thing where she has the animals help her in tricking the soldiers. It's like, okay, so is she trying to be like an action hero kind of thing? And then when she's leading the townspeople to the castle gates, is she Jean Valjean now? Is she trying to like use the power of love to win the revolution? But then she's doing like a Helen Keller kind of thing where she's Annie Sullivan trying to teach Dopey how to whistle. And it's like, who exactly or what exactly is Snow White supposed to be? Is she supposed to be the servant girl? Is she supposed to be the political revolutionary? Is she supposed to be the badass warrior in the woods? Like, who is she? Like, what are you trying to make her out to be? Because as much as we can say the 1937 version was simplistic, it was easy to follow. We know who Snow White was. She was, someone who's trying to escape an evil witch who's trying to kill her. Whereas here, Rachel Zeigler is like playing all these different roles, because it's like every other scene, now she's this, now she's a political leader. But in the next scene, she's like Dr. Quinn, medicine woman. And then the next scene, she's a helpless maiden. But then the scene after that, she's a radical feminist who doesn't need a man to help her or anything. So I was very much confused as to what they were trying to do or what they wanted her to do. And I just walked away thinking none of this makes sense whatsoever. Because in trying to make Snow White be all these different figures, you made her into nothing. Really.
Yep.
So yeah, those are my takeaways from this pile of shit of a Disney movie. I mean, they definitely do fit Albert Einstein's, definition of insanity, because everybody at Disney has gone insane because they thought by doing Snow White it would draw in a new audience. It would make big bang at the box office, when it didn't. It just didn't work.
Instead, it alienated more and more people, which I guess has been kind of their trend for a while, but it definitely feels a lot more so after that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it kind of looks like we've been talking about this for 2 hours, man. I was expecting us to do only 40 minutes, but holy crap. But Lee, why don't you take us out here?
Yeah, no, I appreciate everyone once again for listening to our ramblings as we talk about a shitty movie that's been blasted by who knows how many people. So thank you all for sticking around if you made it to the end, and please just like, comment, subscribe, share any feedback you want. We always like to hear that type of stuff, and I guess we will see you in our next review.
So Snow White slept and waited for her prince to come, but he never did. Because a woman shouldn't have to depend on a man. Snow White was brought back to life by a lady doctor.
And she lived happily ever after?
Well, she couldn't indulge in strenuous activities like handball, but otherwise, she was fine.
That's nice.